Hello everyone. It's time to begin learning how to do listing input and maintenance inside your Paragon system. My name is Gary Arnett and I am your trainer. As we go through our session today, we're going to learn how to add a new listing to Paragon, how you can save that listing. And in Paragon, we have two types of saving of listings. We have a partially saved listing. You might be familiar with the term incomplete. And we also have a saved listing, which would be a published listing. A partial listing is a listing that has information inside Paragon, but it's not been made available to other users of Paragon. It's available to you and your broker and your office admin. Once that listing has been saved as a complete listing or a published listing, it's then available to other agents to do property searches on and do automatic email notifications. Now, as you're working through, and before the listing is saved or published, while it's in the partially saved mode, you can add up to 30 pictures to your listing, and you can add all 30 at one time. And for many of you, that's going to be a big time saver because you're used to adding pictures either one at a time, or you could add up to 20 pictures at one time. Paragon, you can add all 30 listings at one time, all pictures at one time. And once you've gone through and done some work on a listing, I'm going to show you how you can go back in and do maintenance on your listing. So as you can see, there's a variety of things we're going to be looking at as we look at having or looking at the listing input and maintenance of your properties inside Paragon. Now, as you have questions or want more information on how to do the things we're going to talk about today in the webinar, there are guides and videos available to you. And these guides and videos can be found when you go out to the board website. And you can see the website that's displayed on the screen right now. That is probably the best location to go to get videos and guides that are focused specifically for you as users here in Edmonton of Paragon. Now, if you'd like to, inside Paragon, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button called Help. And when you click on that button, you'll then go out and see Paragon's guides and videos that are available to you. As you're using these videos, may I recommend you use the play, pause, and practice routine. In other words, as you're looking at a video, play it. And periodically, if you want to, at points that are logical to you, go ahead and pause it. And while it's paused, you can go inside Paragon and practice what you've just learned. If you would like to, you can back up the video as many times as you would like, allowing you to repeat the content that was just given, and again, practicing what you've just learned. And then when you're ready, play on. By doing that, you then have self-paced training, helping you learn how to use Paragon. And obviously, the guides are a great tool for you also because they give you step-by-step instructions with screenshots showing you where to click to use that part of Paragon. So I highly recommend that as you're learning how to use Paragon or learning new functionalities of Paragon, to access the help site to take advantage of the guides and videos that have been created and made available to you. Now, as we're working along through Paragon, I believe that Paragon is intuitive. Intuitive that as you're looking at the buttons, as you're looking at the toolbars, the buttons on those toolbars will give you a good idea of what functionality you'll have when you click on them. And because I believe Paragon is intuitive, there are two phrases I would like you to remember. The first phrase I'd like you to remember is, if I see it, I can do it. And it truly is what we'd like you to do. If you see a button, you wonder what it does, well, just click on it and see what it does. Now, there may be some of you that are hesitant about just clicking because you're not sure what's going to happen, and you're afraid that you might cause Paragon to crash, and you might be not wanting to do that. So the second phrase I'd like you to remember is, I cannot kill Paragon. There's nothing that you could do as you're logged into Paragon that would cause it to crash or die. The worst you could do while you're working inside Paragon is to delete a saved search, delete a contact, or delete a CMA. And those are all things that you can recover from. And because you can't kill Paragon, we invite you to go out and explore, experiment, investigate how Paragon works. Again, as you're doing that, please remember, you cannot kill Paragon. Now, with that little bit of an introduction, let's go out and see how Paragon works when it comes to adding a listing and maintaining listings inside Paragon. I'm now over inside your Paragon system, and one of the things I want to point out to you is here in the upper right-hand corner, see where it says MLS Documents? When you click on MLS Documents, you're going to go out to a folder. This is a library that the board has for you inside Paragon. Notice that we have guides, we have miscellaneous forms. In the lower left-hand part of the page as it appears right now, it says input forms. If you were to click on the input forms, you would see different input forms for your different property classes like residential, mobile, commercial, rural. So again, lots of different input forms, and those input forms will give you the criteria that you ought to be adding to Paragon in the fashion that you want to be putting it into Paragon. So it follows the flow of Paragon. Again, by coming out and clicking on the input forms, you can go out and find those documents. Now, those documents, once you see them, you're more than welcome to go ahead and save those to your computer. That way, when it gets time to print out another document, another form for input, this would be like your inventory sheet you go out to the listing appointment with. You don't have to log into Paragon all the way to get it. Just save it to your computer, maybe on your desktop. That way, when you want it, you can go ahead and print it out. However, if you needed, you could open it up inside Paragon and right from there, not only print it, but then save it to your computer. Let me bring this back over to the home page. As we're looking at the home page, I want you to notice here in the top in the toolbar, notice where it says listings. And by clicking on the listings button, you're then going to see several different options that you have as you're working inside Paragon. One of them that I want to draw your attention to is missing geocode search. The missing geocode search has to do with the mapping solution that we have inside Paragon for each one of your properties. And by clicking on missing geocode search, let me just do a left mouse click on that button. If I had any properties that had a poor geocode quality to them or mapping solution, I would then see a number here in the upper right-hand corner in the count. Because it comes up 0, it means that all of my listings have an adequate enough solution or mapping of the property so that if someone went out and did a property search and used a map, my property could be found if it fit the criteria and in the area that they're searching in with the geometric shapes on the map. Now, if you did find that you had maybe one or two or more properties, go ahead and click on search. And as you do that, you'll then get a spreadsheet of each of those different properties. And from there, you can go in and change the geocoding of that property. I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a minute to map your property. But again, this is an important thing for you to be aware of. And again, how did I get here? I just clicked on the listings button. I moved down and to the right, and I clicked on missing geocode search, and it brought me this form. My hope is that you're going to see a 0 here. But there's a good chance as your listings have been moved from ML Exchange into Fusion and from Fusion to Paragon that maybe some of those mapping solutions that you did in ML Exchange and Fusion have been lost, and you want to reestablish that, yes, these properties are in these particular locations. So please make that a priority when you have access to Paragon, when Paragon becomes your only system, to come in and do a missing geocode search and make sure that all of your properties are findable. Let me come back over and let's talk about some of the options you have right here on the listings menu. Over here on the left-hand side, notice I have 4 different property classes. I've got the residential, rural, mobile, and commercial. And that's one of the nice things about Paragon is we can put all of those different property classes into the same Paragon system, and rural and commercial have all the same functionality available to them that you have with residential and mobile. So over on the left-hand side, this is where you would add a brand new listing. Once you've begun adding a listing, you then move over to the right-hand side and you have 2 options underneath maintain. Let's start with the second one, partial. This is what you might know as an incomplete listing. Again, inside Paragon, we call that a partial. This is a work in process listing. This is one where you've got the input form, you've been adding data, and for some reason or other, you've had to stop and pause, be it because of going out to an appointment, it's the end of the day, it's lunchtime, whatever. So you can stop your work, save it as a partial. In fact, you can save it as a partial as many times as you would like, and then be it the next day after lunch, whenever, you can come back in and see a list of your partially saved listings and continue working with them. Once you have all the required fields populated, plus, we highly recommend you add every bit of information about the listing that you can. You never know what a listing agent is going to be searching for because you never know what that buyer is going to require that agent to find for them for that perfect home. And so once that listing has been added, and you've saved it as a complete listing that's now been published, when it comes time to doing maintenance on a listing, you'd come over to maintain and listings, that first option, and there you can do edits on the listings that have been published. That way you're updating that out to the database and for agents to then see the updated information. And some of the changes there could be a price change or a status change as an example. Let's move over to the left-hand side and let's add a residential listing. So I'm going to do a left mouse click with my mouse. And if you're using a tablet where I'm talking about a left mouse click, you just do a tap on that area with your finger on the tablet. So again, your tablet, be it an iPad tablet, an Android tablet, or a Microsoft Surface tablet, can come in and use almost every functionality of Paragon. It's like 99% of what you can do on your desktop or your laptop computer, you can do with your tablet, your Android, Microsoft, or iPad tablet. Your Microsoft Surface tablet, there are no restrictions, no limitations. You can use it everywhere. Now, if you've noticed, when I clicked on Listings Residential, Paragon automatically opened me up into a tax search. We want you to come in and do a tax search to find the tax record for your property and then have that auto-saved into Paragon. And the way you would do that is you put your cursor into where it says link number, and I know everyone has their link number there, so I'm just going to go ahead and put in the link number that I have. And with that information in, I'm going to hit Tab. Or just click anywhere with the left mouse click or a tap with my finger on a tablet, move out of that field, and notice how Paragon has identified that there's one property record that's available for me to look at. I'm going to click on the search button so I can go out and see those results. As I do that, notice that I have that particular property identified. By checking the box and then clicking on autofill, Paragon will then take the information associated with this record and add it to the Paragon input form. Let me go ahead and do a left mouse click. As I do that, this is something that you may not be familiar with. Paragon is now loading in some of the data that would be added to the listing when I click on Save. So this is, again, gives you a chance to look in so you can verify that this is the information I'm comfortable with and I want to add to the listing. So by clicking on the Save button with a left mouse click, we then add that listing information to the input form inside Paragon. In every field that was added through a tax search, notice how it has a green border around that field. So for link number, notice how it has that information. As I'm looking at this information, let me scroll on down. You can see where the tax roll number is. As I open up into address and map, notice how address information has been added also. So again, everything that has a green border to it is information that's come over from your tax record and been added automatically into the Paragon listing. Now, as you're looking at our form, notice that we have a lot of R's. Those red R's mean that particular field is required. And I think you're familiar with red fields inside ML Exchange and Fusion. Again, nothing new. However, there is a change in functionality between ML Exchange and Fusion and Paragon. You're used to having that R change from red to green, indicating that it's been populated. Paragon does not change the color of the R. It will always be a red R, indicating that it is a required field, whether there's a value in the field or not. As you're looking at the field, notice that there are some blue P's. Those blue P's are fields that are required in order to do a partial save. And so I don't have to put in all of my information to save that as a work in process. As I just put in the different fields required with the blue P next to it, I can then move up to the upper left-hand corner where it says Save, move down to where it says Save as a partial listing, and then save it as what you again would know as an incomplete listing. In Paragon, we call that a partially saved listing. That saves it as a work in process, and I can continue working inside Paragon, adding as much data as I want, and then if I need to, finish my partially saving of the listing and come back at a later time. Now, another thing I want you to be aware of is that inside Paragon, we do have a session time remaining countdown clock. And if that countdown clock goes to 0, then you automatically get logged out of Paragon. And in most cases, the information that was not saved, let's say like in a saved search, would be lost. However, as you're working inside the listing module, Paragon behaves a little bit differently. In the background, Paragon does an auto-save of your listing every 60 seconds. Now, as it does that auto-save, it does not save the session clock. It just saves your information every 60 seconds in the background. That way, if you do get distracted and pulled away and your session does time out, the most information you would have lost out of Paragon would be the last 60 seconds. But because you would have been off and away somewhere, then that information has probably already been saved. But just realize that Paragon every 60 seconds is saving all the information that's inside your listing here on the input form. In other modules, if it's not saved, it's lost. But in the input form, we do save it. Let me point out something also to you in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Notice it says input fields. In residential, there are 226 input fields that you could possibly add data to. Again, we recommend you put in as much information as you can, which means it's going to be more than the required fields. Again, put in as much as you can. I like to think of it as full disclosure. You don't hurt your seller by putting in every information you can. Now, as you look right below, notice it says the number of required fields are 39. That means I have a total of 39 fields as a minimum that I must populate in order to save this as a complete listing, publish it so that other agents can search for it. And of the 39, I still have 30 that yet need to be populated. So when this value gets down to 0, that's a good indication to you that you're now in a position that if you wanted, you could save this as a complete listing and publish it to Paragon. Now, as I continue on working down through Paragon, let me go ahead and just do some input of information. And over on the right-hand side, notice that we have magnifying glasses. The magnifying glass indicates that that is a field that has a predetermined list of values from which you must pick from. It's a lookup field. And there's several different ways of adding values to a field that has a lookup magnifying glass to it, or that's a lookup field. One of them, I can just type in a letter, and notice how Paragon gives me the value of active. I can apply that value to the field by hitting the Enter key, the comma key, or the Tab key on my keyboard. And by hitting, let's say, the Enter key, it drops in. By hitting Tab, once the value's been dropped in, I then move on to my next field. And so I can do a type in Tab, and work right on through, putting in all the details I want. I can also, if I want, click on the magnifying glass, and by clicking on the magnifying glass, Paragon will show me the different values available for this particular field. In this case, I'm going to choose single family, again with the left mouse click, or if I'm using my arrows, just move up and down, select the value I want, and then by hitting Enter, comma, or Tab, I can then select that value and save it. So let me go ahead and click on the Save button in the upper right-hand corner. That drops that value in. Again, I could come right on down, typing in the different values I want. So if I wanted to, I can come over and find the different building types. I believe that's going to be a bungalow there for me. If I can't find it directly, I can always come in and just type in a couple characters, and I can then drop that in for me. I guess for building type, that should be detached rather than bungalow. I was trying to put in the wrong value. So Paragon makes it so that I can't put the wrong value into the field. And that's the nice thing about having lookup fields. In this case, I'm looking for a detached single-family property. So again, with a left mouse click, notice the green background. I click on Save, and it drops in. I can continue on through putting in the different values that I'm looking for. So if I'm now looking for style, this is where I could type in my bungalow. Let me go ahead and click on the magnifying glass on the right-hand side and look at all the different values that are available for me. In this case, there's a total of 24, and each page right now is showing up to 25. I could move this out to up to 100 values displayed on the single page, and by typing in a couple characters, notice I now have bungalow come up like I was looking for just a minute ago. So there I have bungalow. Click on Save, and it drops in. Again, I could come right on through adding the different values. Well, let me at this point focus more on the fields that are required to do a partial save. For doing the listing date, I could put my cursor into the field and put in the 2-digit month, 2-digit day, 4-digit year. Or the way I prefer to do it is just click on the calendar. And by clicking on the calendar, I can now look at the calendar, and I can say, well, if I took the listing last night, Sunday the 1st, just go to the month I want, click on the day of the month, and notice how it drops in. For the expiry date, let me come back out, and I'm going to move out 6 months. I've got a contract with my seller for up to 6 months, so let me come out and choose. So I'm going to just choose 1 month, 6 months from now, and it drops in. Now, when it comes to the expiry date, I believe just your broker and your office admin are able to change that value. Again, I could come in and add different values, working right on through. Let me just continue scrolling on down. As I come down into the address and map area, notice that I had to put in the region. Now, because I did the tax autofill, notice it automatically came over from the tax record. One less thing for me to do. I highly recommend that you always do the tax autofill for those existing properties. Now, with my address in, notice where it says Validate Map. When you get to this point, I highly recommend go ahead, click on Validate Map, and this is how you map your property. So I'm going to click with a left mouse click. If you're using a tablet, just do a tap on it. And Paragon's going to go out with our mapping vendor Bing and try to map this property. And notice the red flag. That red flag indicates that Bing believes they found the right location for that property. How do I know that? Look over here on the left-hand side. Notice where it says geocode quality and it says 0.95. That's the signal to you that Bing believes they found the right location on the street for your property. And obviously, Paragon will accept that. Bing would also accept a 0.90. A 0.90 means that Bing was able to get out to the nearest corner, but could get no closer. So as I'm coming right in, had this flag been right up here next to the intersection, it could have a 0.90. And Paragon will accept a 0.90 because typically when you're doing a map search, you're going to include all the properties within that neighborhood or subdivision, and so your property has a high probability of being found. However, that is the lowest quality that Paragon will accept. The next level down is a 0.85. 0.85 is center of postal code. If you think about where your home is relative to your postal code center, you're going to see that's not accurate enough. And so Paragon would not accept that. So any value that has a 0.85 or lower would then be found using the missing geocode search. If you remember, missing geocode search means that the property does not have a high enough quality of mapping solution or identification in order for someone to reasonably find your property. Now, as I'm coming on in, looking at this, I'm just going to move right on in. As I move in, I've now got it fairly close, but I could come over if I wanted and come over to an aerial view. And by coming over to the aerial view, notice that I'm now able to zoom right on in and I can look down and say, is that the right street property? Now, as I'm looking at this, notice I've got a tree-lined road here, but I can be looking at this and say, is this how the back end of that property looks? If it's the correct location, just leave it where it's at. But every so often, Bing might have it a little different. It might be out in the middle of the street. And in that case, just do a left mouse click on that flag, and you can then move it. Let's assume it's supposed to be on the east side of the street, not the west side of the street. As I've moved it over, I now release my left mouse button, and notice what the geocode quality has gone to. It's gone to a 1.0. 1.0 indicates agent hand placed, and obviously Paragon will accept that also. Let me move that back over to the right property, and ideally you're doing mapping, put that flag right on the top center of that property's roof. With that in, go ahead and click on Save. And by clicking on Save, we've now mapped that property. And when we go out and do a partial save, that'll then identify this listing group of information and those geo coordinates or the mapping solution for this particular property. Now, as I continue on down, I could come through and add additional information. But because I believe I've got all of my partially required fields populated, let me come over to Save. As I hover over Save, this first option would allow me to save this as a complete listing and publish it to Paragon if I had all my required fields populated. And if I don't, Paragon's going to give me an error message letting me know which fields I have yet to populate. For this exercise, let's go ahead and save this as a partially saved listing. So hovering over, I do a left mouse click, and notice how Paragon was coming through and identifying that. Okay, Paragon saying, hey, we can have a mapping solution of a 0.95. Do you want to keep it or do I want to ignore it? I'm going to go ahead and just keep it, or let me just ignore it. I'm going to use the solution I put for it with it. And remember, I had that mapping feather just a little bit different than where Bing had it. Having done a partial save, notice this number here, 36. 36 is the temporary or the partially saved ID number for this listing. It is not your final ML number for the property. Paragon assigns the ML number sequentially based on the time that it is actually saved and published as a complete listing. So what I would do is on my input form, that paper form I used as my inventory sheet when I was out doing that listing appointment, I would write down that partially saved number. That way I have that identification as another way to identify that this piece of paper goes with a certain block of data inside Paragon. And that becomes especially important if you happen to be the office admin, where you have multiple listings on your desk at one time and you're doing different inputs on the different listings. Well, as you pick up each bundle of paper or packet of paper, you can verify that the property that we're looking at is associated with a temporary number, or the partially saved number, 36. Having done this save, notice I have two options. I could continue to input or I could be done. I could finish what I'm doing. I'm going to continue to input. I'm going to click on Continue Input with a left mouse click. And with that, my screen is going to refresh. And as my screen refreshes, I want you to note that there's a couple of things that are going to appear on the screen for you. I'm going to go ahead and let the screen refresh up for us. We're waiting on the internet connection to bring me back my information back from Paragon. And it's starting to load up now for us. And there it is. Now, as you're looking at this, again, notice over here on the side, we have our fields. We have a number of field numbers remaining and all. Also notice that on the side, I have a next and a back button. We have what is called a listing wizard. A listing wizard walks you through the key steps you need to consider as you add a listing to Paragon. And we have two different sets of things to consider. Right now, as we're looking at this as a partially saved listing, we're looking at field data and also the ability to add pictures. Let's come on down and do a little more checking here. First of all, I should have pointed this out very at the beginning when we did our auto tax fill. Notice where it says check for duplicate. Before I get very far into the whole process, I could click the button that says check for duplicate, and Paragon will let me know, do I have any duplicates? Notice it says no duplicate listings found. That's a good thing. That means I'm not duplicating another listing that's already inside Paragon, especially if it's an active listing. As I continue on down working through the listing, I can put in as much information as I have about the property. We are already working in the address and map area. When I move down to agent and marketing information, notice there's more information. I can't upload my primary photo here. I could also upload it in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to recommend that we use the wizard to take us out to a point where we could upload all 30 pictures at one time. As we continue on down, notice that we have other details here. For this listing, appointment name, public remarks. Notice for your public remarks, you have 1,020 characters. Well, anytime you have a free-form text field with at least 100 characters, Paragon will give you a check mark over here on the side. This check mark on the side is your spell check button. With Paragon, you get your own unique online spell checker. It's going to come with a standard dictionary, and to that dictionary, you can add your own words. And so if there's common abbreviations that you want to use, if there's words that you have here in Edmonton that we don't have across North America, you have the opportunity to add those words. That way, once that word has been added, or groups of words have been added, you can then do a spell check to make sure your document is spelled properly. Again, so for public remarks, you have 1,020 characters. For your private remarks, you have 510 characters. By clicking on the button over here on the right-hand side, I can open or I can close each of these different boxes or containers. I believe as you're working right now in Emerald Exchange and Fusion, all of your fields are in one big continuous list. Paragon likes to create a logical grouping of fields together. That way, if you need to go back and work with the general information or room information, whatever it happens to be, you can open up to just that particular container or that box and go find those specific fields rather than having to hunt through the entire list. So again, I can come through. Notice that some fields do have an R next to them as you're working through. As we're looking at some of these, I want you to pay attention to those fields that have all capital letters for the spelling of the field name. Those end up being multi-select fields. So as an example, if I click on the magnifying glass next to warranty, notice that I could show here several different types of warranties that would be available to this particular property. When it comes over to heating type, again, notice that it's all capital letters. By clicking on the magnifying glass, again, I could come through and choose the different values appropriate for this multi-select field. Again, I can continue on working through, adding all the different details I want. So I could go specifically to bathrooms. By opening up bathrooms, notice we talked about the different pieces and ensuite that we have available for it. Rooms and their floor areas. Again, notice that there's lots of things that you can be putting in as you're adding details to the listing. As we're working with this, I want to point out a condition that we have inside Paragon. It's called conditionally required. As an example, HOA, homeowner association. A lot of cases, that particular field has a yes, no, but it is a required field. If you say no, then nothing changes. However, if you said yes, the amount of the fee and the frequency as the fee, as an example, could now become conditionally required. They may not have the red R next to them, but when it comes time to save this listing as a complete listing, a saved published listing, Paragon's going to require you to put in those added or additional values to it. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Well, anywhere I'm at inside this partially saved listing, I can click on my wizard button, which is here in the upper right-hand corner, and it says Next. And as I click on Next, I now come over to my input form for my pictures. And here I can upload 30 pictures all at one time. Now notice it says primary and has ABC walking right on through. Once we get done with all the letters for the first time, notice how we double up and we have AA, AB, AC. Notice where it says multiple photo upload. May I recommend you go ahead and click or tap on that. As you do that, our picture admin tool then opens up to your picture selection tool. Notice where it says drag files here. If you had an additional folder open, let's say as your Windows or File Explorer window open, you could find the particular pictures that are on your computer, on your smartphone, on your tablet, on your digital camera, as long as they're all connected up to your computer. You can then drag and drop those pictures into this top field here and then have all those pictures available to add to your listing. You also have the ability of clicking on the black button that says Add Files. You can go out and then select the particular files you want. Before I do picture selection, let me scroll on down and notice that Paragon tells you that right now I could add up to 30 pictures to my listing. Now, and so if I'd already added, let's say 20 pictures to my listing, and I want to add some more, at that point it would say you could upload 10 pictures. This is a smart field here. It lets you know how many empty picture placeholders you have for this listing. Now, when it comes to the file size you can upload into Paragon, you can upload up to a 10 megabyte picture. For your typical smartphone, tablet, digital camera, your pictures will be 10 megabytes or less. So you can directly upload that picture and Paragon will automatically resize that picture for you. And when we resize it down to a size of 125K. But please note the resolution. The resolution is going to be 1280 by 960. If you're here in the room with me, I'm using a standard laptop computer that has the expanded keyboard where I have a 10 keypad off to the side. The 1280 by 960 is actually larger than the display I have for my laptop computer. So if you take that large picture and then resize it into a picture, a brochure, a flyer, a handout, you make it on an 8.5 by 11, you can see that you're going to have good quality to that picture. Now, if you happen to have a picture that's greater than 10 megabytes, you then will need to resize that manually. And if you don't have a program on your computer to manually resize your pictures, may I recommend you click where it says click here. By doing that, Paragon will take you to a page, and based on your operating system, you can download a freeware shareware resizing tool. And with that freeware shareware resizing tool, you can resize multiple pictures at one time. And you can choose the resolution that you're looking for. Again, the resolution we're looking for is landscape. We're looking for 1280 by 960, so that's width by height for that picture. Now, as you're adding pictures to Paragon, JPEG is the ideal picture format. And that is the picture format that your typical smartphones, iPads, and digital cameras take. However, if you have an artist rendition of what our future construction is going to look like, you may have that in a GIF or PNG. If you upload those pictures in a GIF or PNG format, Paragon will automatically convert that to JPEG. Being JPEG, it makes it very easy to distribute your listings through the different syndication tools that you have available to you. And then we want you to be cautious of special characters. If you're looking at your keyboard and you have to hit a shift key in order to get the, let's say, the exclamation mark, the @ sign, the pound sign, or the tic-tac-toe board, whatever, those any special characters, those are things that would not be acceptable in your picture name. So we'd ask you to avoid those. Using simple letters, numbers, even an underscore would be okay when it comes to your picture names. Now let's move back up and let me go ahead and add some pictures. I'm going to click on the button that says Add Files. And as I do that, I'm taken out to my computer. Now, I'd already arranged to get out right to where my pictures are at, but as we open up, Paragon would then let you browse on your computer to find where your pictures are at. If you've connected your tablet, your smartphone, your digital camera, you would then find that over here next to where it says computer and be able to find that particular source for your pictures. Now I'm just going to come through and I'm going to just use my control key to choose the different pictures I want to be utilizing. And so by just coming through, I can pick up to 30 pictures. Now, if I happen to choose more than 30 pictures, Paragon's going to refresh this whole screen and make you choose again, because Paragon would not be familiar with which one to skip or omit if you'd selected too many pictures. So let me go ahead and choose all of those different pictures. I believe that's going to be 30. I'm then going to click on the Open button in the lower right-hand corner of this window. And with that left mouse button click, notice how those pictures have now been loaded into my picture collection tool. So with those pictures there, I'm just going to click on the green button which says Start the Upload. As I click on Start the Upload, notice that green bar that's moving through each of the different pictures. That indicates that Paragon is processing that picture, and notice that the upper right-hand corner, instead of having a red button to it, now has a green check mark. It means that picture has now been processed and is available for adding to Paragon. Let me give this another moment more. As you can see in the folder sizes, I'm not uploading 10 megabyte pictures. And that may be the reason why this goes pretty quick for you. If you're uploading 10 megabyte pictures, it will go a little bit slower. So with those pictures having been added to my picture collection tool, I can now just simply click on the Close button in the upper right-hand corner of this window. And as I do that, I'm back to my Picture Admin tool, and notice how my pictures have now been populated in. As we're looking at the pictures, if you realize that the pictures are not in the right order, you can just drag and drop them. So if I wanted this back patio to be my second picture, I could do a left mouse click, hold it, and drag it over. Notice how Paragon made a gap for that picture to drop in. But notice it did not change the A and the B. In fact, if I wanted to make this other internal picture my primary photo, now it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, notice that it hasn't changed it. It will change those photo labels once I click on Save. So I can drag and drop these pictures to wherever I want them to be. Let me go ahead and just move this down a little bit further, my primary photo. I can take other pictures, move them up and around. And because most people need to be captured, their attention has to be piqued as they're initially looking at the pictures of a listing, may I strongly recommend you put your most important pictures in this first row here. Now, once I've got my pictures where I want them to be, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Save button. By clicking on the Save button, Paragon's going to ask, do I want to save these pictures in their new location? I'm going to say OK. And by doing that, I want you to pay attention to the numbering of the pictures. Notice that whatever is in the upper left-hand corner gets the primary designation. Let me go ahead and drag that primary photo back up to the top and save it, again showing that you can drag and drop as many times as you would like. Now, there's been some times I've been to places and it's wintertime when the picture has been added to the listing or added to Paragon, and so you have snow-covered rooftops and other things showing snow. Well, during the summertime, you may want to change out that picture and give more of a seasonally appropriate picture. So how do you do that swapping? Right here. This button right between the R and the red pencil allows you to swap out those pictures. So by clicking on that button, you again go out to your computer, find the current picture, maybe that summer picture, and you can then swap them out. Notice the red pencil. The red pencil allows you to edit this picture. So as I was taking my pictures with my tablet or my smartphone, I had it in the wrong orientation. And it's really easy to get your smartphones in the wrong orientation. So notice I have the rotation buttons here. By clicking on the right-hand side, we're going to rotate that 90 degrees or clockwise to the right, or I can rotate it 90 degrees to the left or counterclockwise, getting the right orientation. Also, if I wanted to, I can just do a left mouse click and hold, and notice that I can create a rectangle on my picture. Release my left mouse button, and what I'm able to do is then crop my picture. So if I took my picture and I had a lot of neighboring homes or other things that I didn't want to have displayed, notice how I can come through, identify the region I do want, and by clicking on the crop tool, notice how that picture's been resized for me. And once it's been resized, I just click on Save. Paragon's going to ask, do you want to save the new editing that you've done on this picture? Just say yes, and it's done. And there you have the ability to go in and not only rotate your picture so it's in the right orientation, but you can also crop it so you're giving that clean shot that you're wanting to have. Also notice for each picture you can add a label. And you're going to be able to add a label to the picture, so it could be like master bedroom, whatever. You can also add a description, and I love the descriptions. You have up to 255 characters that you can put in about any picture. Each picture can have a description up to 255 characters. Now, in a lot of cases, it doesn't require all 255. It's a bedroom, it's on the first level, you put the dimensions in. But in some cases, maybe like with this really fancy exterior photo, or maybe you've got a home office and you want to tell the people that, hey, there's an external entrance to this office. It's been wired and has so many amperage for the fuse box for that particular room. Maybe it's a little suite, and so it's got a little kitchenette and a bath area, whatever. Again, a lot of things you can add to that description if you want it. Again, on a picture by picture basis, you can add the different details you want to have about that. Now, once I've got my pictures in and I've clicked on save, let me make sure I've saved everything. Again, it says there's nothing to save, so I hadn't made any changes since the last save. I click on next. And by clicking on next, Paragon then takes me out to a property report. And you have control of this property report. If you're to click on preferences, move down and to the left and click on System, assuming you've already gone through and done your preferences wizard, you can then choose what is it you want to have as your double-click secondary report. And so you can choose whichever report you would like. I like this agent detail report because it gives you a lot of great information. Anyways, you can control which property report is displayed here. And let's look across at the toolbar here. Notice it says print. I could print out this particular report. Notice that it says email. By doing a left mouse click on the email button, I can then choose to have that go as a hyperlink. There's the current listing that I've got selected. And then I can come through and choose several different property reports if I want to then add them. By clicking on add, I can then email this out to my buyer, or in this case, the seller. That way we can let them know what this is going to look like when this is now that it's been published, or even in the partially saved mode, you can say, this is what it's looking like. I'm getting ready to publish your listing into Paragon. So again, it gives you a clean, easy way to communicate with your seller about their property. If it were me, once my listing is completely populated and I've saved it and it's now been published, I would print out a hard copy of this listing. That way I have a record of what were the details in the listing at the time that it was added to Paragon. Again, as you can see, lots of things you can do. And by clicking over here on the left-hand side, if I want to go back to my input form, left mouse click brings me back. Again, I can continue working. Well, it's coming up. I've got an appointment, so I'm going to hover over save. I'm going to come over to save as a partial listing. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and ignore. I'm going to keep the solution that I have for my mapping of the property, and I'm going to click on Finish. And by clicking on Finish, I can now see my different listings that I've got. And here's the property that I had just a minute ago. That's 36 that I was working on. Well, let me go ahead and get out of this. I'm just going to close things down. Let's assume it's the next day. I've come back into the office. It's time to continue working on the listing. I would come over to Listings, move down and to the right, and I click on Partials. And by clicking on Partials, I can see my number. It was 36. I can also see the address. And by clicking on the number, I go directly back into the input form. And let that load up for me. And I can continue working. Now, if I wanted to, I could close up all of my containers or logical groupings of fields. That way, if I want to come down and we'll look at the rural information, I can quickly come out and look at the rural details. If I want to look at my condo details, let me come back over to condo. I can work with those details, or HOA. Those are my details. So again, by having these different containers or logical groupings of properties, it allows me to go directly to that area I want to work with and continue working on my listing. Now let me come over and click on Save Listing. Let's assume that for some reason or other, I'm ignoring what's down here in the lower left-hand corner. I'm just going to come over Save, and I want to save this listing. By doing a left mouse click on Save, Paragon says, wait a second, you missed a couple things. In fact, by clicking on Modify, Paragon will then take me out to those different areas where I need to be working at. So if I click on Modify, notice how Paragon took me directly to Secondary Suite Yes, No. If I wanted to, I could just push the F8 on my computer. It's going to take me to each of the different fields that I need to be working on in order to complete this listing. And so even though I've tried to save this listing, as a complete listing, I still have the ability to come back, do a partial save, and continue working. Now, one of the nice reasons of using the partial save is maybe I'm the office admin and I realized that the input form that was given to me was incomplete. I got to that point, realized it was incomplete. I could then save it or put in as much information I have, communicate with the listing agent saying, hey, I need the following field information. And that way you can come back in and continue to do that input. Well, let's take the assumption that the listing has been published and it's now time to do some modification of the listing. How would I do that? Well, I would again come over to listings, do a left mouse click on that, move down, and the first option, listings, that is where I go out and I maintain listings that have already been published. Let me do a left mouse click, and because I'm in at a broker level, I can see the different listings that are in my office. I can click on the MLS number here on the side, or the ML number, and that would take me back into that input form, and I have my listing wizard. I could then move over to my listings and I could view the property. There's some other things that I could see also, and let me go ahead and click on that so you can see those. So if I wanted to, I could go and add an open house. An open house is intended for the general public to come in and view the property at designated times. If you had any kind of a broker tour or a caravan where the agents, only real estate professionals are going to visit the property, you could then see that. And then you also have an activity report. The thing that I like to do is when I'm coming out to maintain a listing is I don't want to go through the whole form. I want to go to just those specific fields that I want to modify. So I would recommend that when you go to do maintenance on the listing, just come over and click on select an action on the right-hand side of that row. And by doing that right mouse click, notice that Paragon gives you a window. This window allows me to go out and maintain any field in the listing, or if I wanted to, I just click on price change. And by clicking on price change, I didn't have a picture there with it, so I'm going to have some issues with these listings without pictures. But it was what would happen is by clicking on price change, a window would open up and Paragon would then show me my current asking price. I could then change that price and click on save, and I would then update the price of my listing. If I needed to change the expiry date, that would be something that would be done at the broker level or the office admin level. They could come in and change the expiry date. The Paragon would show what is the current expiration or expiry date, put in the new date, and when you click on save, that field is then updated. If you click on remarks, both the agent remarks, the public remarks, and other remarks fields will then be displayed for you, and you can then go in and modify the content in each of those different fields. So it groups all of those remarks fields together. If you wanted to add virtual tour, you would click here and you would see the virtual tour field that you could then paste the URL in, the web address for your virtual tour, directly into that field. When it comes to change geocode, again, by clicking on change geocode, it's going to take us back out to that same map that we're looking at. I could then come in and map this property by dragging that feather to its appropriate location. And instead of waiting for that to go ahead and open up, I'm just going to close it down. I showed you how to map the property when we did that partially saved listing. Well, by coming back in, I can then come over and copy clone. Copy clone is a neat tool to use, and it's a part of your listing maintenance, which means you can only copy clone your own listings. So let's assume I put in a listing, maybe it was a year or two ago, and I've got another property that is very similar. Maybe it's even in the same subdivision. It's basically the same floor plan and the same builder. Well, I could come in, find that original listing that is mine, copy clone that, and Paragon's going to require about another 6 to 12 fields to be populated in that are unique to that property. So obviously you're going to have things like the region, the link number, the address, listing date, expiration date, asking price, just to name off a couple of fields right off the top of my head. But the nice thing about this is that you can then copy your listing, make it a brand new listing, which then saves the time and effort to go ahead and put in a property. Let me give you another example. You've got a builder. They're inside a subdivision, and they've got the same floor plan. They got floor plan 1, left, floor plan right. Then they've got a second floor plan left and right. So they're using just basically 2 floor plans. It's a matter of whether it's a left or right orientation. Put in the first listing. Maybe it's a 2-story. And then for all the other properties that the builder wants to put onto the market, you just copy clone that particular listing, and it's there in there quickly for you. And then for the single-story home, again, copy that one and make that available for all those other listings in that subdivision that have that same kind of design and floor plan. Again, it saves you lots of time. As mentioned before, I could put in the open house, I could put in the tour, I could go over to my picture admin area so I can maintain and manage my pictures. I could also put it to the sold status. And so if I wanted to, I could change that from an active or a pending listed to sold or closed listing. And then again, I have activity report that I could then look at details of activity relative to this property. So as you can see, when it comes to maintaining the listing, my choice is always coming over using the select an action with a left mouse click, and all the different possible maintenance items are made available to me. Especially when it comes to the commonly changes of pricing and expiry date, these bring those right here directly to you, quickly and easy to get to. And that is how you'd go out and add a listing and maintain a listing inside Paragon. And so with that having been said, I think that pretty well covers the topic that we're looking for. So let me move back over to the PowerPoint and finish up our webinar for today. In our session today, we talked about how to add a brand new listing. Again, click on the listings button, and on the left-hand side, you have the 4 different property classes. Choose the appropriate property class, and then Paragon takes you to the tax autofill. Using the link number, find your property, populate it, and then you automatically add detailed information from the public records, the tax records, that then help you go on through and add your listing. As you're adding your listing, you have the ability to do a save. You can do a partial save. You know that as an incomplete save. It's really a work in process. It allows you to save the listing right now with all the details that you have at this point. You can do a partial save as many times as you would like, even after you've tried to save it as a complete listing that you wanted to publish to Paragon. Once it's been partially saved, you then have the ability to upload up to 30 pictures all at one time. And if you remember, as we're doing working with the listing images, we could rotate the pictures, we could crop the pictures, we could even drag and drop the pictures. That way it's in the right order to catch the attention of future buyers of that home. You also have the ability to add labels and descriptions. Again, with those descriptions, you have up to 255 characters of description you can put in about that property. And if you choose your words wisely, you can really tell a grand story about your property's particular rooms or images that you have associated with that listing. Again, as I mentioned, you can add up to 30 pictures all at one time, or you can upload what you have at this point, and then later on you can upload the balance of those pictures. And then I've shown you how to go in and maintain that listing. Again, click on listings, move down and to the right, and the very top option is maintain your published listings, your complete listings. Right below that is your partially saved listings, those works in process. By using the select an action on the right-hand side, you'll see all the different options that are available for you for that particular saved type of listing, be it a partially saved or complete saved listing. I know we've covered a lot during this last hour, and some of you may be wondering, well, how am I going to retain all this? How can I go out and get more information on how to use Paragon's listing input and maintenance? Well, that's where your help sites come in. By going out to the help site, you have guides and videos that will help you remember the different things that we've talked about during this video. I strongly recommend that you go out to your board's website, and there you're going to be able to find videos and guides that have been created uniquely and specifically for you. It'll have your fields and your information. Again, a great place to go to. I highly recommend it. The guides give you step-by-step instructions with screenshots showing you where to click to use that part of Paragon. As you're watching the videos, again, I recommend the play, pause, and practice routine. Play the video and pause it at logical points for you. Practice what we've just shown you. If you need, back us up as many times as you would like, and then when you're ready, play on. This will give you self-paced training, and with the guides, it's going to give you a reminder that if you want an instruction book on how to use Paragon. Now, if you want, you can click on Help in the upper right-hand corner. That will take you out to Paragon's help site. The Paragon help site is generic in nature and does not specialize specifically on Edmonton's database. And so that's where you're going to find videos and all. But again, if you're looking for things uniquely for Edmonton, I recommend you go to your board website. But either site's available to you to help you get in and learn how to use Paragon.